Sophia's fingers paused over the kitchen counter she was wiping down. The crying from upstairs had been going on for nearly 20 minutes now. She glanced at the ornate grandfather clock in the hallway. Almost midnight. Mr. Chen, her employer, would be home soon from another late business meeting, and his son would still be awake, screaming. It wasn't her place to interfere. That's what she kept telling herself. Sophia Reyes was the housekeeper, not the nanny. Taking care of 4-year-old Liam was Miss Powell's job. The professional childcare worker Mr. Chen had hired after his wife's passing 6 months ago. But Ms. Powell had stormed out yesterday after an argument with Mr. Chen, leaving only a terse note and her house keys on the kitchen table. "I quit. 2 weeks' pay will suffice." The crying grew louder. Sophia set down her cleaning cloth and looked around the spotless kitchen. She had already finished her evening duties. Dishes washed, floors mopped, lunches prepared for tomorrow. There was no reason she couldn't at least check on the boy. She made her way up the grand staircase, her practical shoes quiet against the plush carpet. The Chen mansion was always so silent these days. In the 6 months she'd worked here, Sophia had never heard music playing, television blaring, or guests laughing. Just the occasional business call, the tapping of computer keys, and lately Liam's crying. The door to Liam's room was cracked open, a sliver of nightlight spilling into the hallway. Sophia knocked gently. "Liam? It's Sophia, may I come in?" The crying paused briefly, hiccuped, then resumed. Sophia took that as permission and pushed the door open. The boy was sitting up in his bed, blankets tangled around his small legs, face red and wet with tears. His dark hair stuck up in all directions, and his dinosaur pajamas were twisted around his middle. "Hey there," Sophia said softly, approaching slowly. "Bad dream?" Liam nodded, his breath catching on a sob. "The monsters were coming to get me. And then I called for Mommy, but she didn't come because she's in heaven and... Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. Sophia sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry about your mom, Liam, and I'm sorry about the monsters. Ms. Powell says monsters aren't real," Liam whispered. "But she doesn't know. They hide in the closet until she goes away." Sophia nodded seriously. "Ms. Powell might not know about all kinds of monsters. But you know what? I think I know a way to keep them away." "Dad says I'm too big to sleep in his room," Liam said, his voice small. "Well, there are other ways." Sophia glanced around the room, taking in the expensive toys barely touched, the photographs of a smiling woman with Liam on her lap, and the small white piano in the corner gathering dust. "Would you like me to stay until you fall asleep?" Liam looked at her with wide, uncertain eyes. Sophia wasn't sure if she was overstepping. After all, she was just the maid, the woman who cooked their meals and cleaned their floors. Mr. Chen barely acknowledged her presence most days, his grief and business concerns keeping him distant from everyone, including his son. But something in the boy's lonely expression made her continue. "When I was little and had bad dreams, my grandmother would sing to me. Would you like that?" Liam considered this, then shook his head. Ms. Powell tried singing. It didn't work, Sophia smiled. "What about a story?" Another head shake. "Dad reads stories, but the monsters still come back." Sophia's eyes drifted to the piano again. She hadn't touched a piano in months. Not since she'd packed away her music scores and performance gowns. Not since she'd accepted that her dreams of concert halls had to be replaced with practical concerns like paying rent and sending money back home to her family in Mexico. "Do you like music, Liam?" she asked carefully. The boy shrugged. "Mom played the piano for me. She was teaching me, but then she got sick." Sophia felt her throat tighten. "Would you like me to play for you? Just until you fall asleep?" Liam's eyes widened. "You know how to play?" "I do," Sophia said simply, not elaborating on her years at the conservatory, the competitions she'd won, the future she'd once envisioned for herself. "If you think it might help with the monsters." Liam considered this seriously, then nodded. "Mom said music makes the air too beautiful for monsters to breathe in it." Sophia smiled at the child's logic. "Your mom sounds very wise." She stood and walked to the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing down. The instrument looked well maintained despite its disuse. Mrs. Chen must have been serious about her playing. Sophia sat on the bench and positioned her hands. It had been 6 months since she'd last played, the same length of time the Chen household had been in mourning. She began with a simple melody, something gentle and soothing. Her fingers were stiff at first, but muscle memory soon took over. The notes filled the room, soft and clear. She glanced over at Liam. He had settled back against his pillows, his eyelids already drooping. Sophia transitioned into a nocturne, letting the music wash over the room. She played softly, watching as Liam's breathing slowed and his body relaxed. She was so focused on the child that she didn't hear the bedroom door open wider, or notice Mr. Chen standing in the doorway, his briefcase still in hand, his tie loosened after a long day of meetings. She didn't see the way he froze at the sight of someone sitting at his late wife's piano, playing his late wife's music to his now peaceful son. Sophia finished the piece and began another, a lullaby her grandmother had taught her. The notes came easily now, her fingers remembering what her mind had tried to forget. She played for Liam, but also for herself, remembering why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Its ability to calm, to heal, to say what words could not. It was only when she finished the lullaby and looked up that she noticed Mr. Chen. He stood motionless in the doorway, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Sophia's hands jerked away from the keys as if burned. "Mr. Chen," she said, standing quickly. "I'm sorry, He raised a hand to stop her apology, his eyes moving from her to his now sleeping son. Liam was curled on his side, one small hand tucked under his cheek, his breathing deep and even. "He had a nightmare," Sophia explained nervously. "Ms. Powell isn't here and he was crying for so long." "I just thought, you played beautifully," Mr. Chen said, his voice rough. It was possibly the longest personal comment he had ever made to her. Usually their interactions were limited to good morning and the dinner is in the oven and please order more coffee. "Thank you," Sophia replied, unsure what else to say. "I should go finish my work." She moved to leave, to slip past him and retreat to the safety of her role as the housekeeper, not this strange new territory where she played his dead wife's piano to soothe his grieving son. Mr. Chen didn't move from the doorway. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Sophia hesitated. "I studied at the conservatory before." "Before?" "Before life happened," she said simply, not wanting to burden him with her story of family illness, mounting debt, and dreams deferred. "It was a long time ago." Mr. Chen nodded once, then finally stepped aside to let her pass. "Ms. Powell quit," he said, stating the obvious. "Yes, sir. Yesterday. I'll need to find a replacement." He ran a hand through his dark hair, looking suddenly exhausted. The harsh hallway light revealed the shadows under his eyes, the new lines around his mouth. At 38, Richard Chen was one of the youngest tech millionaires in the city, but grief had aged him. "I can help with Liam until you do," Sophia offered, surprising herself. "Just the basics. I work here anyway, and his school is on my way to the market in the mornings." Mr. Chen studied her face. "That's not in your job description." "Neither is playing the piano," Sophia replied with a small smile. "But I don't mind. Liam is a good kid." Something flickered in Mr. Chen's eyes. Gratitude, perhaps, or recognition of a kindness offered without expectation of return. "We'll discuss a temporary arrangement in the morning. And additional compensation, of course." "Of course." Sophia nodded, professional once more. "Good night, Mr. Chen." As she walked back to her small room off the kitchen, Sophia thought about the music that still seemed to linger in her fingertips. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed playing, how empty her hands had felt without piano keys beneath them. She also thought about the look on Mr. Chen's face when he'd heard the music, pain and memory and something else, something like relief. As if a door had been opened in a house where all the windows had been shut tight against the light. Sophia didn't know what tomorrow would bring. A new nanny probably, and a return to her regular duties. But tonight, for a few minutes, she had been a pianist again. And somewhere in the big quiet house, a little boy slept without monsters, and a grieving man had heard music again for the first time in 6 months. Perhaps that was enough for now. The next evening, Sophia found herself standing outside Liam's bedroom door again, this time by invitation. After their brief morning discussion, Mr. Chen had agreed to pay her extra to help with Liam's care until he found a suitable nanny replacement. He'd been formal and businesslike about the arrangement, but Sophia had noticed the dark circles under his eyes had seemed less pronounced, as if he'd finally gotten a good night's sleep himself. 3 stories, Liam informed her seriously as she entered his room. He was already in his dinosaur pajamas, teeth brushed and hair damp from his bath. That's what Ms. Powell always read. Sophia smiled and sat on the edge of his bed. 3 stories it is. And then sleep? Liam's eyes darted to the piano in the corner, then back to Sophia. And then maybe one song? To keep the monsters away? Something warm bloomed in Sophia's chest. She nodded. One song? But stories first. She read through the picture books Liam selected. Stories about dragons and astronauts and talking trees. Liam leaned against her side, his small body gradually relaxing as the stories progressed. By the 3rd book, he was yawning, his eyelids growing heavy. When she finished, Sophia gently tucked him in and moved to the piano. Tonight, she chose a gentle Mozart piece, one that flowed like a peaceful stream. As she played, she noticed Liam's eyes drifting closed, his breathing becoming deep and even. She was so focused on the music and the sleeping child that she didn't immediately notice Mr. Chen standing in the doorway again, just as he had the night before. This time, though, he wasn't in his business suit but casual clothes, dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that made him look younger, less like a CEO and more like just a father. Sophia finished the piece and stood up quietly. Careful not to wake Liam. He's asleep already? Mr. Chen whispered, sounding surprised. Sophia nodded. The music seems to help. They stepped into the hallway, pulling Liam's door partially closed behind them. He used to fight bedtime for hours, Mr. Chen said, running a hand through his hair. Even with Miss Powell, even with me. Children respond to different things, Sophia said carefully. Sometimes it's just finding what works. Mr. Chen studied her face in the soft hallway light. Where did you say you studied? The conservatory? The National Conservatory, Sophia replied. I was there for 3 years. That's impressive, he said, sounding genuinely surprised. Why are you… He stopped himself, seeming to realize how the question might sound. Working as a housekeeper? Sophia finished for him with a small smile. Life happens, Mr. Chen. My father got sick. Medical bills piled up. I needed reliable work, not the uncertainty of auditions and competitions. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'm sorry about your father. He's better now, Sophia said. The treatments worked. But by then I'd sold my piano, given up my apartment near the concert hall, moved to a place I could afford on a steady salary. They stood in silence for a moment, the large house quiet around them. You could use my wife's piano anytime, Mr. Chen said suddenly. Not just for Liam's bedtime. If you wanted to practice, I mean. The offer caught Sophia off guard. That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose. It's not being used otherwise, he said, his voice taking on that rough quality it had when he mentioned anything connected to his late wife. Lynn would have hated seeing it sit there collecting dust. She loved that piano. Sophia nodded, not knowing what to say. This was the first time Mr. Chen had mentioned his wife's name to her. I should get back to work, she said finally. I still need to prepare the lunch containers for tomorrow. Mr. Chen seemed to remember himself, straightening slightly. Of course. Thank you for helping with Liam. It's no trouble, Sophia replied honestly. He's a wonderful boy. As she turned to go, Mr. Chen spoke again. What was that piece you were playing? The one that put him to sleep? Mozart. Sonata in C major, Sophia answered. It's often called one of his simpler pieces, but I've always found it quite profound in its simplicity. A ghost of a smile crossed Mr. Chen's face. Lynn used to say something similar about music, that sometimes the simplest melodies carried the most feeling. Sophia smiled back, sensing that sharing this memory was significant for him. Your wife sounds like she was very wise. She was, Mr. Chen said softly, then cleared his throat. Good night, Sophia. Good night, Mr. Chen. The days fell into a pattern after that. Sophia would complete her regular housekeeping duties during the day while Liam was at preschool, then help with dinner and bedtime in the evenings. Every night she would read Liam stories and then play the piano until he fell asleep. And every night, Mr. Chen would appear in the doorway to listen. Sometimes he would arrive early enough to hear the end of the bedtime stories. Leaning against the doorframe with a soft expression Sophia never saw during daylight hours. Other times he would slip in just as she began to play, standing silently with his eyes closed, letting the music wash over him. They never discussed these moments. But something was shifting in the atmosphere of the house. The silence that had permeated the walls since Sophia's arrival 6 months ago was gradually being replaced by something warmer. One evening, about 2 weeks after their new routine began, Sophia was playing Debussy's Clair de Lune when she heard a small sound behind her. Thinking it was Mr. Chen arriving for his usual silent observation, she continued playing, letting the delicate notes fill the room. It was only when she finished and turned that she realized the sound had been Mr. Chen settling into the rocking chair beside Liam's bed. The boy was fast asleep, one arm flung above his head, the other clutching his stuffed triceratops. "That was beautiful," Mr. Chen said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," Sophia replied. "It's one of my favorites." "It was one of Lynn's favorites too," he said, looking at his sleeping son rather than at Sophia. "She used to play it on nights when she couldn't sleep." Said it calmed her thoughts. Sophia nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Music has a way of organizing chaos inside and out. Mr. Chen finally looked at her, something like recognition in his eyes. "Yes, exactly that." An unexpected connection hung in the air between them. Not romantic, but a shared understanding of loss and the healing power of music. Sophia had lost her career dreams. Mr. Chen had lost his wife and the mother of his child. But in this quiet room, with Debussy still echoing in their minds, those losses felt less sharp-edged somehow. "I haven't found a new nanny yet," Mr. Chen said after a moment. "The agency sent over some resumes, but none of them seemed right." Sophia waited, sensing there was more he wanted to say. "Liam hasn't had a single nightmare since you started playing for him," he continued. "He's happier in the mornings, more focused at preschool according to his teacher, even talking more about his mother in a healthy way." "I'm glad," Sophia said sincerely. "He's been through so much for someone so young." Mr. Chen nodded, then took a deep breath. "I was wondering if you might consider a change in your role here. Less housekeeping, more childcare, and—" He hesitated. "Piano lessons for Liam. Lynn had started teaching him before she got sick. I think he'd like to start learning again." The offer took Sophia by surprise. It would mean a significant change. Less cleaning and cooking, more time with Liam, more time at the piano. "I could bring in a separate housekeeping service for the cleaning duties," Mr. Chen continued when she didn't immediately respond. "And, of course, I'd adjust your salary accordingly." Sophia thought about what this would mean. A chance to reconnect with music, to teach rather than just perform. A chance to help a child who clearly needed the stability and comfort music could provide. "I'd like that," she said finally. "I'd like that very much." Relief and something like happiness flickered across Mr. Chen's face. "Good. That's good." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the sleeping child's gentle breathing the only sound in the room. "Would you play something else?" Mr. Chen asked suddenly. "Just one more piece before you go?" Sophia smiled and turned back to the piano. This time she chose Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, letting her fingers dance across the keys, bringing to life the piece that had once been her audition piece for the conservatory. As she played, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. The pure joy of making music without the weight of expectation, or the shadow of what might have been, just music filling a room where it was wanted, needed even, and behind her in the soft glow of a child's nightlight, a father closed his eyes and let himself remember the woman he had lost through the universal language they had shared, not with pain, but with gratitude that her music lived on in their son's peaceful sleep and in the unexpected gift of the woman whose fingers now brought that music back to life. Spring arrived, bringing with it cherry blossoms that drifted like pink snow across the garden of the Chen mansion. Sophia sat on a bench near the kitchen door, watching as Liam chased falling petals, his laughter carrying on the breeze. 3 months had passed since her role in the household had changed, and with that change had come others. Subtle shifts in the atmosphere, the routines, the relationships. "Got one," Liam cried triumphantly, holding up a perfect blossom that had landed in his cupped palms. He ran to Sophia, carefully transferring the delicate flower to her hand. "It's for my music book," Sophia smiled. They had started pressing flowers between the pages of Liam's piano lesson notebook, a small tradition that had begun when he'd found a violet on their walk home from school and declared it too pretty to die. Now, his beginner's music book was slowly transforming into a botanical collection, each page marking not just his progress with quarter notes and finger positions, but also the changing seasons. "It's beautiful," Sophia said, carefully placing the blossom between 2 blank pages at the back of the notebook. We'll check it in a few days to see how it's drying. Liam nodded seriously, then tilted his head toward the house. Can we practice now? I want to show Dad my new song when he gets home. Of course, Sophia replied, gathering their things. We have about an hour before dinner. Inside, the house felt different than it had when Sophia first arrived nearly 9 months ago. The formal living room that had once seemed like a museum, pristine and untouched, now showed signs of life. A child's drawing framed alongside expensive artwork, cushions slightly dented from actual use, fresh flowers in vases where dust had once collected. They settled at the piano in Liam's room, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows. At 5 years old now, Liam's feet still dangled above the floor as he sat on the bench, but his small fingers were developing surprising dexterity as they picked out simple melodies. Remember what we talked about with the counting? Sophia prompted as Liam positioned his hands. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, Liam recited, beginning to play the simple waltz they'd been practicing all week. His face scrunched in concentration, tongue poking out slightly between his teeth, a habit Sophia found endearing but hadn't mentioned for fear he would become self-conscious and stop. He made it through the first 2 lines flawlessly, then fumbled on a transition. His shoulders slumped immediately. Dad won't be impressed, he mumbled. Hey, Sophia said gently, that was really good. And you know what musicians do when they make a mistake? Keep going, Liam answered, repeating their mantra. That's right. Just like when you fall down but get right back up. The music doesn't stop because of one wrong note. She demonstrated, intentionally playing a wrong chord then smoothly continuing. See? The important part is the feeling you put into it. Liam nodded and straightened his back, determination replacing disappointment. He started again from the beginning, and this time when he reached the tricky part, he slowed down slightly but made it through. Perfect, Sophia exclaimed. Your dad will love it. Will you play it with me when I show him? The way we practiced with you doing the left-hand part? If you'd like me to, Sophia agreed. Now, should we practice one more time, or would you like to hear a story before dinner? Story, Liam decided immediately. The one about the boy who found the door in the tree. Sophia laughed. Again? That's 3 times this week! Liam just grinned, already climbing onto his bed and patting the space beside him. Sophia joined him, pulling the well-worn book of children's stories from his nightstand. As she read, she marveled at how comfortable this had become. This closeness, this routine, this feeling of belonging in a way she hadn't expected. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by Mr. Chen's voice calling up the stairs. Hello, anyone home? Dad! Liam scrambled off the bed and raced down the hallway. Sophia marked their place in the book and followed at a more sedate pace. By the time she reached the foyer, Liam was already in his father's arms, chattering excitedly about cherry blossoms and piano songs and a frog he'd seen near the garden pond. Mr. Chen caught Sophia's eye over his son's head and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, something that had been rare when she first came to work for him but had gradually become more common. Sounds like you had a busy day, he said to Liam, setting him down. Hello, Sophia. Mr. Chen, she replied with a nod. You're home early. The investors' meeting went better than expected, he explained, loosening his tie. They loved the new software proposal. There was a lightness to him today, an energy she hadn't seen before. Sophia helped me learn a new song, Liam announced, tugging at his father's hand. Come hear it. Come now. Mr. Chen laughed, allowing himself to be pulled toward the stairs. At least let me take off my jacket, buddy. I'll go check on dinner while you two do that, Sophia said, already turning toward the kitchen. It should be ready in about 20 minutes. No, Liam protested. You have to play too. You promised to do the left-hand part. Sophia hesitated, glancing at Mr. Chen. They had settled into a comfortable working relationship over the past months, but there were still boundaries. Still moments when she reminded herself that despite the changes in her role, she was still an employee in his home. Please join us, Mr. Chen said, his voice warm. I'd like to hear what you've been teaching him. Upstairs in Liam's room, the boy positioned himself proudly on the piano bench, waiting until both adults were seated, his father in the rocking chair, Sophia beside Liam on the bench before beginning his performance. This piece is called The Dancing Bear, Liam announced formally. just as Sophia had taught him to introduce his music, composed by Mr. Thompson and performed by Liam Chen with assistance from Ms. Sophia Reyes. His small fingers found the keys, and the simple waltz began. Sophia watched, ready to join in with the left-hand accompaniment they'd practiced, but holding back to give Liam his moment to shine. When they reached the middle section, she gently added the bass line, creating a fuller sound that made Liam beam without losing his place. When they finished, Mr. Chen applauded enthusiastically. "Bravo, that was wonderful, Liam. You've been practicing hard." "Sophia says I have natural musicality," Liam reported proudly, stumbling slightly over the big word. "She's right," Mr. Chen agreed, then turned to Sophia. "You're a good teacher. He's progressing faster than I expected." "He's a good student," Sophia replied, "and he has music in his blood, I think." She said it without thinking, then worried she'd overstepped by referencing his late wife, but Mr. Chen just nodded. "Yes, he does. Lynn would be so proud to see this." There was a moment of comfortable silence, broken only when Liam asked, "Can we have dinner now?" "I'm starving." Both adults laughed, the moment of shared remembrance passing naturally into the present. "Go wash your hands first," Sophia instructed, and Liam dashed off to the bathroom. Left alone with Mr. Chen, Sophia stood and straightened her skirt. "I made roasted chicken with vegetables. There's plenty if you'd like to join us." It had become their normal routine for all three to eat together, another boundary that had softened over time. "I'd like that," Mr. Chen said, then added, "I have news, actually. Something I want to discuss with you after Liam goes to bed." Sophia raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. But before she could ask anything further, Liam returned, hands dripping despite supposedly having been washed. "Hands, not wrists," Sophia chided gently, pointing him back toward the bathroom. "Actually dry them this time." Dinner passed pleasantly, with Liam dominating the conversation as usual, jumping from topic to topic with the boundless energy of childhood. Mr. Chen asked thoughtful questions, drawing out details about his son's day in a way that showed genuine interest, not just parental duty. After helping Liam with his bath and bedtime routine, Sophia played a gentle nocturne as the boy drifted to sleep. This, too, had remained their ritual, even though the nightmares had long since stopped. Music had simply become part of the language of their household, as necessary as good morning and sweet dreams. When she was certain Liam was asleep, Sophia quietly left his room, finding Mr. Chen waiting in the hallway just as he had that very first night months ago. But now, instead of standing awkwardly at a distance, he gestured toward the stairs. "Would you join me for tea in the study? There's something I'd like to discuss." Sophia followed him to the room she rarely entered, his private study with its wall of books and large desk overlooking the garden. He prepared 2 cups of tea from the electric kettle on a side table, handing one to her before sitting not behind his desk but in one of 2 comfortable chairs arranged near the window. "I've been contacted by the Symphony Hall," he said without preamble. "They're holding a special memorial concert next month, featuring pianists who've studied at the National Conservatory. Lynn's name came up. She was an alumna too, though I think before your time there." Sophia nodded, surprised. "I didn't realize. She must have been very talented." "She was," Mr. Chen confirmed. "They've asked if they could include one of her compositions in the program, and they're looking for pianists to perform." Sophia's heart beat a little faster. "That sounds like a beautiful tribute." "I suggested you," Mr. Chen said directly, watching her face. "I hope that wasn't presumptuous, but I've heard you play for months now." "You're extraordinary, Sophia. You should be on that stage." Sophia stared at him, teacup forgotten in her hands. "You, what?" "I gave them your name. They'd like you to audition next week." He leaned forward slightly. "It would just be for this one event, but it could be a way back into that world if that's something you want." Sophia felt a rush of conflicting emotions: excitement, fear, gratitude, uncertainty. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll consider it," Mr. Chen replied. "That's all I ask." "And Liam? My duties here? We'd work around it. The rehearsals, the performance date." He smiled. "Liam would be thrilled to see his teacher on stage. We'd be in the front row." Sophia looked down at her hands, the hands that had cleaned floors and prepared meals, but had also coaxed music from ivory keys and guided a child's small fingers across them, hands that had once dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations. "I'll think about it," she said finally. looking up to meet his gaze. "Thank you for thinking of me." Mr. Chen nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. "Music should be shared, Sophia. Some talents are too special to be kept behind closed doors." As she left his study that night, Sophia felt something shift inside her, a door long closed beginning, just slightly, to open once again. Sophia stared at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirrors of the Symphony Hall practice room. She hardly recognized herself in the simple black dress she'd bought for the audition, her hair swept up in a neat bun instead of the practical ponytail she usually wore around the house. She flexed her fingers, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. It had been nearly 4 years since she'd played in a space like this. A room designed for music, with perfect acoustics and a grand piano worth more than she would earn in several years. The familiar smell of wood polish and the distant sounds of other musicians warming up brought back a flood of memories, both sweet and painful. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, straightening her shoulders. "It's just one audition." But they both knew it wasn't just an audition. It was a door reopening to a life she had reluctantly left behind. A chance to reclaim a piece of herself. The night before, after Liam had gone to bed, Mr. Chen had found her in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of tea gone cold. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he'd asked, leaning against the counter beside her. Sophia had nodded, not trusting her voice. "You know," he'd said thoughtfully, "Lynn used to get terrible stage fright. Before every performance, she'd convince herself she was going to forget every note." "What did she do?" Sophia had asked, curious despite her anxiety. Mr. Chen had smiled, a soft expression that appeared more often these days. "She'd say, 'The music already exists. I'm just letting it pass through me for a while.'" It helped her remember that it wasn't about being perfect. It was about being a conduit for something beautiful. Now, sitting at the gleaming piano in the practice room, Sophia repeated those words to herself. "The music already exists. I'm just letting it pass through me." A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. A woman with a clipboard peered around the door. "Ms. Reyes? They're ready for you in Hall B." Sophia nodded and stood, smoothing her dress with damp palms. As she followed the woman down the corridor, she thought of Liam's face that morning when she'd left the house. He'd presented her with a drawing of stick figures on a stage, one labeled Sophia, surrounded by musical notes. "It's for good luck," he'd explained seriously. "Dad says you might be nervous, but you shouldn't be because you're the best piano player in the whole world." The memory brought a smile to her face as she entered the small auditorium, where 3 people sat in the otherwise empty audience. "Sophia Reyes?" A woman with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes looked up from her notes. "I'm Catherine Webb, artistic director. These are my colleagues, Thomas and Vivian. We understand you studied at the conservatory some years ago." "Yes," Sophia replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "I completed 3 years before I had to withdraw." "And you're currently working as—" The question hung in the air, slightly uncomfortable. Sophia lifted her chin. "I'm a music teacher and caregiver for a young student. Previously, I worked as a housekeeper for the same family." She saw the slight raises of eyebrows, the exchanged glances. "I see," Catherine said neutrally. "Well, we're interested in your playing, not your employment history. What will you be performing for us today?" Chopin's Nocturne in C minor, followed by an original composition by Lin Chen, Moonlight on Water. Now there was genuine interest in their faces. "You have access to Lin Chen's unpublished works?" Thomas asked, leaning forward. Her husband provided the score, Sophia explained. "He thought it would be appropriate for the memorial concert?" Catherine nodded. "Indeed. We were very sorry to hear of her passing last year. She was a remarkable talent." She gestured toward the piano. "Whenever you're ready, Ms. Reyes." Sophia approached the piano, adjusting the bench slightly. She placed Lynn's handwritten score on the stand but didn't open it yet. First, the Chopin, a piece she knew by heart, one that would help settle her nerves before attempting Lynn's more complex composition. She took a deep breath and began to play. The familiar notes flowed from her fingers, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. She closed her eyes, letting the music speak through her, remembering what it felt like to play not just for a sleeping child or an audience of one, but for the pure joy of bringing these notes to life. When the final chord of the Chopin faded, there was a brief silence before Catherine nodded appreciatively. "Very nice, Ms. Reyes. And now the Chen piece?" Sophia turned to Lynn's composition. She had spent the past week studying it. fascinated by the unique voice that emerged from the pages. It was challenging but playful, with unexpected harmonic shifts that somehow resolved beautifully. As she played, she thought of the woman she had never met, but whose presence still filled the house she now called home. The woman whose piano had brought music back into Sophia's life, whose child she now taught, whose husband still grieved but was slowly learning to live again. When the final notes of Moonlight on Water drifted away, Sophia released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Catherine broke into a warm smile. "That was lovely, Ms. Reyes. You've clearly done justice to Lynn's composition." She made a note on her clipboard. "We'd like to include both pieces in the program if you're amenable." "The concert is 3 weeks from Saturday." Sophia blinked in surprise. "You mean I'm in?" "Most definitely," Thomas confirmed with a nod. "Your technique is excellent, and there's an emotional quality to your playing that can't be taught. Plus, there's a certain rightness to having you perform Lynn's work, given your connection to her family. We'll need you for 3 rehearsals before the performance," Catherine added. "All business now. Our assistant will be in touch with the schedule." "Will that work with your current employment situation?" "Yes," Sophia said, a smile blooming on her face. "Yes, I believe it will." When she returned to the Chen house that afternoon, she found Liam waiting anxiously at the window, his small face pressed against the glass. He flung the door open before she could even reach for her key. "Did you do it? Did you play good? Are you going to be in the concert?" The questions tumbled out in a rush as he bounced on his toes. Sophia laughed, kneeling to his level. "Yes, yes, and yes. They liked both pieces, and I'll be performing in the concert." "I knew it," Liam shouted, throwing his arms around her neck. Dad, come quick! Sophia got the job." Mr. Chen appeared from his home office, a rare smile lighting his usually serious face. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "I had no doubt they'd recognize your talent." "I couldn't have done it without your encouragement," Sophia replied honestly. "And Lynn's beautiful composition definitely helped." The directors were very moved by it. Something flickered in Mr. Chen's eyes. Pride, sadness, gratitude all mingled together. "She would be pleased to know her music will be heard again." He cleared his throat. "This calls for a celebration. Liam, how about we take Sophia out for dinner tonight?" "Ice cream too?" Liam asked hopefully. "Definitely ice cream too," Mr. Chen agreed. As they drove to the restaurant later, Sophia sat in the passenger seat beside Mr. Chen, with Liam chattering excitedly in the back about how he would dress up in his fancy clothes for the concert and how everyone would clap really loud for Sophia. "Is it okay if I tell my class that my piano teacher is famous?" Liam asked suddenly. Sophia laughed. "I'm hardly famous, Liam, but you will be," he insisted with a child's certainty. "Dad says you're better than most of the pianists he's heard at the symphony hall." Sophia glanced at Mr. Chen, who kept his eyes on the road but couldn't hide the slight flush on his cheeks. "High praise indeed," she said softly. "Just the truth," Mr. Chen replied, equally soft. At the restaurant, seated at a corner table with candles flickering between them, Sophia watched as Liam carefully cut his chicken into tiny pieces the way she had taught him, his tongue poking out in concentration. Mr. Chen was more relaxed than she had ever seen him, his tie loosened, occasionally laughing at his son's enthusiastic stories. "I've been thinking," he said during a lull in conversation, "perhaps we should move the piano from Liam's room to the main living room. It seems silly to keep it tucked away, especially now." Sophia nodded. "That would be nice. It would get better natural light there too, which is better for playing. And everyone could hear when we practice," Liam added excitedly. "Exactly," Mr. Chen agreed, then hesitated before adding, "I've also been thinking that perhaps we should discuss your position again, Sophia." Her stomach tightened. "Oh? This concert opportunity, it might not be the last. If you're returning to performing, even occasionally, your current arrangement with us might not be sufficient." Sophia set down her fork carefully. "Mr. Chen, I enjoy teaching Liam, and the schedule has been very manageable so far." He held up a hand. "I'm not suggesting we end our arrangement. Quite the opposite." He took a breath. "The house needs a proper music director, not just a piano teacher. Someone to oversee Liam's overall musical education, perhaps introduce him to other instruments as he grows older, organize small recitals at home." "A music director," Sophia repeated. turning the words over in her mind. With appropriate compensation and flexibility to pursue your own performance opportunities, Mr. Chen added, if that would interest you. Sophia looked between father and son, Liam with sauce on his chin and hope in his eyes, Mr. Chen with an expression she couldn't quite read but that made her heart beat a little faster. I think, she said carefully, that would interest me very much. Later, as they walked toward the car with Liam skipping ahead, ice cream cone in hand, Mr. Chen spoke quietly beside her. There's one more thing I'd like to ask, but it can wait until after the concert. What is it? Sophia asked, curious. Mr. Chen smiled, a hint of nervousness showing through his usual composure. Something important. But tonight is about celebrating your achievement, not adding complications. As they drove home under a sky full of stars, Sophia found herself wondering what question could possibly make Richard Chen, one of the most confident men she had ever met, look nervous. But the thought drifted away as Liam began singing a made-up song about pianos and ice cream from the back seat. And soon they were all laughing as he improvised. Increasingly silly rhymes all the way home. The symphony hall glowed with warm light against the evening sky as people in elegant attire filed through its grand entrance. Sophia peeked through the curtain from backstage, her heart pounding at the sight of the rapidly filling auditorium. The memorial concert for alumni had drawn a larger crowd than anyone expected. Looking for someone specific? Catherine asked, appearing beside her with a knowing smile. Just checking the crowd, Sophia replied, though they both knew she was searching for two particular faces. Your family is in the front row, left side, Catherine said kindly. The little boy hasn't stopped bouncing in his seat since they arrived. Sophia didn't correct Catherine's assumption about her family. In many ways, over the past 10 months, the Chens had become just that, not by blood or marriage, but through shared meals and music lessons, bedtime stories and morning rushes to school, through grief transformed slowly into healing. 15 minutes until places, Catherine reminded her, squeezing her shoulder before moving on to check on other performers. Sophia retreated to the small dressing room she'd been assigned, closing the door for a moment of quiet. Her performance dress, a deep blue gown that Mr. Chen had insisted on purchasing for her despite her protests, hung on a hook. She'd already done her hair and makeup, a far cry from her days of practical ponytails and barely there lip balm. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, she called, expecting a stagehand. Instead, Liam burst through the door in a miniature suit and bow tie, his hair slicked down in what had clearly been an attempt at formality, but was already springing back to its usual unruly state. Sophia, Dad says I can only stay 1 minute because you're probably doing mental preparation, but I wanted to give you this for luck. He thrust a small package wrapped in newspaper and decorated with an excessive amount of tape into her hands. Thank you, Liam, she said, genuinely touched. Should I open it now? He nodded vigorously. It's from me and Dad, but it was my idea. Sophia carefully unwrapped the package to find a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny piano. Oh, Liam, she breathed, lifting it carefully. It's beautiful. Dad got a real jeweler to make it, Liam explained proudly. Look, the piano even has tiny keys. And look inside the box, there's more. Sophia looked more closely at the wooden box itself and noticed something engraved on the inside of the lid. The music already exists. You just let it pass through you. Lin Chen's words, the ones Mr. Chen had shared with her before her audition. Do you like it? Liam asked anxiously. Dad said you might think it's too much, but I told him you'd love it because it's a piano and pianos are your favorite thing and… I love it, Sophia assured him, blinking back unexpected tears. It's perfect. Will you help me put it on? Liam's face lit up as he carefully fastened the bracelet around her wrist. Now you have to play extra good because you have a lucky piano bracelet. Sophia laughed, the tension in her chest easing slightly. I'll do my very best. Liam, time to go back to our seats. Mr. Chen appeared in the doorway, handsome in a well-cut dark suit. His eyes met Sophia's over his son's head, warm with something she was finally allowing herself to recognize. The concert is about to start. Break a leg, Liam shouted as his father ushered him out, then added worriedly. Not really, though. Left alone with Sophia, Mr. Chen lingered in the doorway. The bracelet was supposed to be for after the performance, but Liam couldn't wait. It's lovely. Sophia said, touching the charm gently. And Lynn's words, "Thank you. They've helped you before. I thought they might help tonight." He took a step closer. "You look beautiful, by the way." Sophia felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you. For everything, the opportunity, the support, the dress." "Sophia," he said quietly, "you've given us far more than I could ever repay. You brought music back into our home when we needed it most." Before she could respond, a stagehand appeared to announce 5 minutes until places. Mr. Chen nodded and stepped back. "We'll be right there in the front row," he said, then added softly, "Remember, the music already exists." Sophia took her place at the side of the stage, watching as the concert began with a string quartet. 2 pianists performed before her, both technically brilliant. Her nerves returned in full force as her turn approached. "And now," the announcer said, performing Chopin's Nocturne in C minor, and an original composition by our late alumna Lin Chen entitled Moonlight on Water. "Please welcome Sophia Reyes." The applause carried her onto the stage. She bowed briefly before taking her seat at the gleaming grand piano. As she positioned her hands above the keys, the small silver piano charm caught the stage lights, glinting like a star. She looked up and immediately found Liam's excited face, and beside him, Mr. Chen, whose steady gaze gave her the final push of confidence she needed. The Chopin flowed from her fingers as if she'd never stopped performing, each note clear and intentional. She felt herself relax into the music, the months of practice with Liam sitting beside her, the late nights after he was asleep when she would play for herself, and sometimes for Mr. Chen, who would listen from the doorway with closed eyes. When she transitioned to Lynn's composition, something magical happened. The piece, which she had practiced diligently but always found technically challenging, suddenly seemed to play itself. It was as if Lynn's spirit guided her hands, showing her exactly how each phrase should breathe and flow. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes as she realized she was giving voice to a silenced talent, bringing Lynn's music to life in a room full of people who had known and respected her. In the front row, she could see Liam watching with wide-eyed wonder, and beside him, Mr. Chen with an expression of such raw emotion that she almost faltered. But the music carried her forward, through the complex middle section with its rippling arpeggios like moonlight dancing on water, into the peaceful resolution that felt like coming home. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence before the audience erupted in applause. Sophia rose from the bench on shaky legs and bowed, her eyes finding Liam and Mr. Chen again. They were both on their feet, Liam clapping wildly while Mr. Chen's face shone with pride and something else, something that made her breath catch. Backstage after the concert, Sophia was surrounded by her former professors and fellow musicians, all expressing admiration for her performance and asking where she'd been all these years. She answered their questions politely but kept glancing toward the door waiting. Finally, Liam burst through the crowd, followed more sedately by his father. "You were amazing," Liam shouted, throwing his arms around her waist. "Everyone was clapping so loud, and the lady behind us said you made her cry, but in a good way." Sophia laughed, hugging him back. "Thank you, Maestro. I couldn't have done it without your help practicing." "Indeed," Mr. Chen agreed, joining them. "Your performance was extraordinary, Sophia. Particularly Lynn's piece. I've never heard it played with such understanding. It felt like she was guiding me," Sophia admitted softly. Mr. Chen nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I think perhaps she was," Catherine approached, beaming. "Sophia, that was remarkable. Several directors from the Philharmonic are asking about you. They're looking for soloists for their upcoming season. Would you be interested in discussing possibilities?" Sophia blinked in surprise, looking between Catherine's excited face and Mr. Chen's carefully neutral one. I would need to consider my current commitments," she said carefully. Catherine nodded briskly. "Of course. No rush, well, some rush, but we can talk next week." Wonderful performance. She hurried off to speak with other musicians. "Sounds like an amazing opportunity," Mr. Chen said quietly when they were alone again, Liam having wandered off to examine the backstage equipment under the watchful eye of a stagehand. "It would be," Sophia agreed, studying his face. "But I have responsibilities that matter to me." Liam would understand. "Not just Liam," she interrupted gently. Their eyes met, and all the unspoken things that had grown between them over the past months seemed to hover in the air. That question I wanted to ask you, Mr. Chen said finally. The one I said could wait until after the concert. Sophia nodded, her heart beating faster than it had even before her performance. I was going to ask if you would consider staying permanently. He took a deep breath. Not as our music director, though you're certainly that. Not as Liam's teacher, though he adores your lessons. But as part of our family. Richard, she said softly, using his first name for the very first time. I know it might seem sudden, he continued quickly, or inappropriate given how our relationship began, and I would completely understand if your career is taking you in a different direction now. Sophia reached for his hand, effectively silencing him. It's not sudden. Not to me, no. She shook her head, smiling. For months now, I've been falling in love with your son. And, she added more softly, with his father. The relief and joy that spread across his face made him look years younger. More like the man in the photos with Lynn and baby Liam that still sat on the piano at home. So if you're asking what I think you're asking, Sophia continued, my answer is yes. I want to stay. I want to teach Liam. And yes, maybe perform occasionally if opportunities arise. But most of all, I want to be part of your family, not as an employee, but as my wife? Richard finished, his voice hopeful. Yes, Sophia said simply, as your wife. He leaned forward and kissed her gently, a promise of a new beginning. A small whoop of joy interrupted them. They turned to find Liam watching with a huge grin. Does this mean Sophia is going to be my mom now? He asked, bouncing on his toes. Richard looked at Sophia, letting her answer. Not to replace your mom, she said carefully, kneeling to Liam's level. No one could ever do that. Your mother will always be your mother, and we'll always honor her memory and her music. Liam nodded seriously. But you could be like, a bonus mom? Dad says it's okay to have room in your heart for more people to love. He said his heart got bigger when he realized he loved you. Sophia looked up at Richard, who shrugged with an embarrassed smile. Kids remember everything you say. A bonus mom sounds perfect, Sophia told Liam, pulling him into a hug. Later that night, after celebration dinners and excited phone calls to Sophia's family, after Liam had finally fallen asleep clutching his program from the concert, Sophia and Richard stood in the doorway of his room, watching him sleep. He hasn't had a nightmare in months, Richard whispered. The music keeps the monsters away, Sophia replied, leaning against his shoulder. Richard wrapped an arm around her waist. You know, the first night I saw you playing for him, I thought I was seeing a ghost. I couldn't believe anyone else could bring such beauty into our home after Lynn left us. She never really left, Sophia said gently. She's in Liam's smile, in the music he creates, in the love you carry for her. And now there's new love too, Richard murmured, kissing the top of her head. A different kind of music in our home. Sophia nodded, thinking of the journey that had brought her here, from a cleaning job taken out of necessity to a second chance at both music and love. From the maid to bonus mom, from loneliness to family. New music, she agreed, but it harmonizes perfectly with the old. As if in response, Liam sighed contentedly in his sleep, his small fingers twitching slightly as if playing piano keys in his dreams. Sophia smiled, touching the silver bracelet on her wrist. The music existed already, in this house, in their hearts. They were just learning together how to let it pass through them,